I think growing up in that environment, yes, I can understand human tribalism and psychologically why some of these things and biases can exist, but it's just weird to be here in 2024 and people who are supposed to be academics and who call themselves, educated, the people who have done the work, they're the ones who are kind of going back to this sort of very primitive idea of, someone being white means this, someone being black means this, and you need to actually treat each other differently and speak to each other differently. Like, to me, it's not just silly and wrong. I think it's deeply anti-Christian, and it's very dehumanizing in a way. And I think it's kind of offensive on all fronts. I think it's offensive, regardless of what color you are. It's offensive in a different way.
Yeah, I think it's all those things. We could spend an hour on each of those. Dehumanizing, anti-Christians. It's all those things. I had a similar experience growing up. In fact, we mentioned it kind of jumping off in the movie, growing up in the 90s. And, I went to public school in a liberal, pretty liberal area. And it was a very diverse, school, people of all races and all of that. And you certainly notice when someone's of a different race, okay? But it's not a major focus all the time, and you don't have to sit around talking about how you feel about the fact that you're different races, and there's no conversation about what inherent problems a certain race might have. And the other interesting thing, too, I was thinking about recently and I think this is the case for many people that grew up in my generation and before that especially if liberals today could hear like the kinds of things that me and my friends would say to each other. We have a very diverse group of friends, right? Like we all did. Yeah. If they could hear the kind of things we would say to each other and the kind of jokes that we would tell to each other, on the surface, it's like they say, well, it's racist. How could you say that? But for us, the fact that, we notice each other's differences and we would ruthlessly like make fun of each other and laugh about it. Yeah. And that's a sign of actual progress, that you can actually laugh about these things.
I actually have a little bit of a thought about that one. Now, it's such an interesting point you make. And I think that's a very masculine thing, being able to I went to boarding school from the age of 11, and everyone got it. It was just like, no matter who you are, no matter what you look like, people would find the thing about you that they can make fun of. And that's, I don't think women do this girls and women don't do this to the same degree, right? Yeah. Boys and men, we rib on each other, you make jokes, that you kind of haze each other to some degree. And actually that's a sign that you can be comfortable with each other and that you can trust each other, right? And you're not so frail and fragile that just being teased a little bit is going to sort of cause you to collapse. And I do wonder if, with a lot of things, including schooling, academia, I think that a lot of the things in the modern West have been shifted into a more feminine framing of everything.
Yeah.
And so what we used to just call joking around or teasing, that's now harmful, that's now toxic, that's now bullying, because it's being viewed through a more maternal lens.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So I think you're right, and I guess that is always an important qualifier. We're talking about, well, this is the way it was when we were growing up. It's like, for this anyway, it is specifically, this is how it was for boys growing up. Yeah. Because this is a male way of relating to each other. That women are always at least a little bit sort of scandalized by, and that's fine because men and women are different. Yeah. But that's the thing, when you're a boy and then when you grow up to be a man, this is just this is what you do with your friends. You ruthlessly make fun of them. And the more outrageous and offensive the insult, the funnier it is. And it's a sign of, this is like a sign of affection, really. Yeah. You could find that even people complain all the time. Maybe this kind of ties into these complaints about how comedy, stand-up comedy even, is is dying now. It's not dead, but it's dying, and you compare it to comedy in the '90s, and you know, a lot of jokes about this kind of thing, and it was acceptable because we understood that's what comedy is. And usually people will say, well, we became a more woke, politically correct culture, and that's why a lot of that stuff went away. But I think you've nailed that. Also, along with that, we've become a feminized culture, and all that stuff changes because it's not feminine to relate to each other that way.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to force. It's the same with schooling. You're trying to sort of force the boys into the more be more like girls in a way, essentially.
Absolutely, that's what they're doing. Yeah.